I want to talk to you about Hyundai. Now, Hyundai is a relatively young brand, having only really come about in existence in the late 1960s. And since then, they've been a producer of cars that are, shall we say, under the title worthy but dull. Now, I'm not being cruel, I'm not being unkind. It's just that that's their kind of USP. They're able to build good value for money, reliable cars for people that just want to go from point A to point B. And that's how we've always perceived them. So to change that perception, to make us think in a different way, well, that's going to take some doing. And yet, back in 2019, that's what they tried to do by showing us a concept car called the 45. And they said, we're going to build this. Well, lo and behold, to our surprise, just a few short years later, they did. And it was the Ioniq 5. Guess what? They've done it again. And they've done it with their 2020 concept car, the Prophecy, which is now this. Welcome to another edition of Sneak Peeks. Welcome to the brand new Hyundai Ioniq 6. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go on to this week's edition of Sneak Peeks and the new Hyundai Ioniq 6, it is of course that time where I ask you to make sure you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. And once you've done that, press the little bell button down below, because then you're notified of when our next video goes live. If you like the video after you've watched it, make sure you give it a bit of a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Let us know how we're doing. So, the Ioniq 6. Now, we're not able to drive the car. We're here just to look at it on one of our sneak peek editions. The drives are coming a little bit later on. But what is it? Well, as I say, it's the second of Hyundai's new Ioniq family. Now, the original Ioniq, which was that sort of, five-door hatchback kind of Toyota Prius style car, kind of started laying the foundations there of their new electric sort of way, if you like. But it shares just the name with those cars, and that car's now gone from production. Ioniq will just become Hyundai's EV brand, if you like, its sub-brand, much in the same way that BMW have i and Mercedes have EQ and Audi have e-tron. So that's what this is. And you'll notice that it doesn't look anything at all like the Ioniq 5, and that's deliberate. And that's what we're going to see going forward with the new Ioniqs. There's going to be another one coming soon, believe it or not, called the Ioniq 7, which is going to be a large SUV and look nothing like either this or the Ioniq 5. And that's an interesting thing, because Hyundai say that they don't need to look the same. Yes, they're part of the same family, but that doesn't mean their design has to be exactly the same. Well, let's take a bit of a deeper dive and find out what it's all about. And so it's the styling that we start with. And, well, it looks nothing like the Ioniq 5, does it? And that's deliberate. You see, Hyundai don't want to go down the route of something like Audi, who have that sort of Russian doll-esque style design going on, where each car is just like a facsimile of each other. They want each car to have their own individual personalities. Yes, they're part of the same family, but each car should be distinctive in its own right. And I really like that, and I applaud them for doing that, and I think that's the right thing. There are commonalities, which we'll see as we go around the car, and in Hyundai's case, it's the pixel. So although you don't have that sort of like squared off kind of Minecraft styling of the Ioniq 5, that 1980s bitmap styling, you've instead been replaced with more kind of 1930s streamline, of that kind of Raymond Loewy kind of style of Art Deco kind of streamlining that we saw way back then. And I think this is a really handsome car. And although the front is very distinctive, it's probably not its best angle. But never mind, let's start here. As I say, the pixels you'll see along the daytime running lights, and also the graphics above and below the headlights. There's also pixels down here, these 6 little pixels down here in the middle of the grille. Why 6? Well, it's the Ioniq 6, of course, that's why. You've got active cooling flaps down here. Now these will obviously open and close as the battery and motors need cooling as you're driving along. What's interesting, you will see in this darker coloured car, is there's a black strip that runs along here between the leading edge of the nose going just above the number plate, where you've got your parking sensors and your cameras embedded into it. So all that technology is sort of hidden away, and it's a really, really nice design. But as I say, it's not just the front that's the most distinctive part of this car. Wait till you see the rest of it, because it's the side profile that's probably going to court the most controversy. Now, this isn't going to be universally loved, this car, and I don't mind that, and I don't think Hyundai do either, because I'd rather they were brave, I'd rather they tried something different rather than kind of follow the kind of, as I say, the Audi Russian doll-esque styling cues of just making it look like one of the normal other cars, but electric. I love the fact that they've gone completely different over the Ioniq 5. And there's some really, really neat details around it as well. Now, the first one that I noticed was this line here. This part of the bonnet at the top of the wing, it doesn't make it, it looks like it doesn't quite match up. It's a bit odd when you see it in the flesh, but it's actually, it lines up with a line that goes through the headlight, and that's a really lovely little design touch. I really like that. And then this is the line that obviously then follows the shoulder line all the way along the back and droops down at the back. Now, this is very much an aerodynamically styled car. You've got this big tall roofline up here that then drops down again, this kind of coupe-like profile. There's three cars that this brings me in mind of. The first one is the first generation Mercedes-Benz CLS, and when you see the car at this sort of area here, you'll see that kind of CLS style there. It's not a direct copy, that's not what I'm saying, it's just that's what it reminds me of. The other car it reminds me of is a car you won't be familiar with, by a man called Jason Castriota, who was tasked with designing the new Saab 9.3 before Saab went bust, and he referenced a lot of the old Saabs in it, the 9.2, the 9.3, the 9.4, and that again, this kind of more kind of aero kind of dynamic streamliner shape is the cars that this really reminds me of. If this car had come out as a Saab, I wouldn't have been shocked at all. And of course, like the 900 Turbo, you've got that lovely kind of wing at the back here underneath the window line, but we'll get to the back in a second. 20-inch wheels the car's riding on, which fill the arches really, really nicely. There's a clever little bit of aerodynamic work going on here, where you've got this little bit extra that's kind of tacked onto this wheel arch. It's a really neat piece. You don't see it till you're up close, and it allows airflow to come across the wheels here. The car comes with an aerodynamic drag coefficient of 0.21. It's probably one of the most aerodynamically efficient cars in the world, probably close to the Mercedes-Benz EQS, which is the most aerodynamic car in the world. And that's helped as well by these mirrors, which are cameras. But again, another little nice piece of design touch is the top of the mirror house, or the camera housing, is actually translucent, so you can actually see the insides of it with the Hyundai lettering in there, and them small pixels. And that's also the same with a shark fin aerial here, where you can actually, it's clear, you can see the internals, and I like that, being able to see the kind of tech part of the car, making the technology part of the design. You've got a lovely kind of swooping sharp kind of crease that runs up here, kicks up at the back, and then leads into this rear bumper. But otherwise, you don't have those, I say, those big sharp creases and angles that you do on the Ioniq 5. It's its own distinct car, and I love that. But wait till you see the back. See what I mean? Let me go and stand over this side so you can bathe in all its glory. This is probably one of the most distinctive rear ends I think I've seen in a car in such a long time. As I say, you've got this high mounted wing just below the trailing edge of the rear window, which, as I say, reminds me of a Saab 900 Turbo from the 1980s, which I absolutely love, which is then kind of ribbed along here, and then you've got this parametric pixel lated high mounted stop lamp in here, and then that is then obviously continued upon this really distinctive light bar. And as I say, it's that angle there that reminds me of that Mercedes-Benz CLS, just this kind of rear three-quarter view there. There's also a bit of 911-esqueness in this kind of light bar across, with a kind of Ioniq 6 badging across there, and then this little kind of ducktail spoiler tacked onto the kind of boot lid here, so you've got the twin spoilers. It looks phenomenal, it really does, and I think pictures doesn't do it justice. You've really got to see it in the flesh just to see how well they've done the design of this car. Underneath the bumper, however, you've got the next bit that I absolutely love as well, down here, where you've got more pixels, which are your fog lights and your reversing lamps there. The Prophecy concept car this came from, its whole rear end was literally all pixelated. Now obviously they can't do that for obviously legislation, but they've done the best they can, and I think they've done a phenomenal job of it. So yes, you've got more lights down in there, and then the same over on this side here with this nice kind of diffuser bit here. It's a phenomenal looking car, it really is, and as I say, it's going to divide opinion, but in mine, I think it's a cracker. Now, in terms of boot size, we don't have any official figures as yet, but it is quite commodious. Now, it's not a hatchback. It's a bit like the Tesla Model 3, which is going to be this car's kind of main rival, if you like. That's the market sector that the Ioniq 6 is aiming at. So as I say, it's quite a decent size boot that you'll find in the car, but say like that car, it is actually a booted saloon. What is very nice, again, you've got those little 6 kind of pixels on the boot button, this tiny little boot button here, and you've got the 6 pixels on it. Again, just a little tactility when your finger touches it. Love that. So yeah, so it opens up to quite a decent size. There's a relatively narrow kind of opening there, but it goes all the way back. I mean, I haven't got my suitcases with me today, but I've no doubt whatsoever that the AutoEV 4 suitcase test, this would pass with flying colours. There's a tiny little bit of underfloor storage in here for cables and charging stuff, and also as well there is a front boot, fruit, whatever you want to call it, which I'll show you, which is similar to the Ioniq 5s. In other words, it will depend whether or not it's a single or a dual motor car, but I'll show you that, and then we'll talk about motors and stuff in the usability section. So yeah, it's not huge in this car. I'm assuming this car is a dual motor car. This is the only one that's in Europe, so I've got to be really, really careful with it. But you've got a little bit of storage here. I think on the Ioniq 5 it's about 24 litres, and it doubles in size if you go for a single motor car. So we can assume that it's going to be something similar when it comes to the Ioniq 6. But yeah, there'd be enough there to put an extra charging cable, or a little fold-up umbrella, or maybe a small bag or something. But it's not huge, but it's all right. Now, in terms of rear seat space, well, it's pretty decent. I mean, this is a left-hand drive car, so this seat isn't set up as my driving position. However, there is a feeling of space in terms of legroom back here, and because it's based on the eGMP platform that it shares with the Kia EV6, the Ioniq 5 obviously, and the Genesis GV60, you've got a complete flat floor, so this sort of bench across the back is very comfortable for 3 people. There is enough space for a middle passenger's feet down here. Headroom's okay for me. As you know, I'm not the tallest man in the world. It's okay for me. I think if you were 6 foot, that kind of design, that sloping roof design, is going to start to encroach on you a little bit. However, in terms of the competition, the Polestar 2, the Tesla Model 3 and the BMW i4, none of those are particularly huge in the back, and a couple of them do suffer a little bit on the headroom side. So, you know, we're not going to labour the point of Hyundai for not giving all of that. But it's okay. As I say, there's certainly a good feeling of space back here because of the way the car has been designed. I'll come on to door bins and the door cards a bit later, but you know, you've got some nice touches down here where you've got, again, kind of translucent materials, and there's a huge amount of emphasis on sustainability in the car and the way the car's constructed, but we will talk about that in a second. You've got connectivity back here, a couple of USB-C ports there. As I say, there's some storage, there's door bins there, there's a centre armrest with a couple of cup holders there. Is there a load-through facility? No, it doesn't appear to be. You've got ISOFIX points, which are a little bit kind of difficult to get into, but I'm sure they'll be all right in the end. But yeah, as I say, in terms of legroom and width for 3 across, it's absolutely fine. It's just the headroom, as I say, if you're over the kind of 6 foot mark, you'd start to feel a little bit encroached. But the way the car is designed, the way the cabin has been designed, there is an overwhelming feeling of space on all the rest of the dimensions. Now, the interior design of the car is as distinctive as the outside of the car. And again, if we take the 3 main rivals that the seller is going to be looking at, cars which we tested recently in a triple test, which was the BMW i4, the Tesla Model 3 and the Polestar 2, there's none of the fussiness of the i4's interior in here. There's none of the kind of slightly more cramped and confined feel of the Polestar 2. It's probably most like the Tesla in terms of the way it's laid out and the sort of minimalism, but it feels different to the Tesla. Like the Ioniq 5, the main part of the dashboard is 2 12-inch displays which are joined together here, but they're a bit more seamlessly integrated than they are in the Ioniq 5, where there's a distinct separation. You don't have that in the 6. So you've got a similar kind of layout, as I say, to that car, which means that the dashboard in front of me has the same sort of issue where you've got the kind of speedometer kind of slightly too far up on the left hand side there. I'd like to have seen it maybe more in the centre, but you've got your state of charge and your miles to go on this side here, and then obviously there's lots of different things that you can sort of like play around with in terms of the front Sorry, the infotainment screen, I should say. Shortcut buttons are here. So whether it's map, navigation, media, you know, or you can use it as a touch screen. You just go into it, and of course you've got the usual kind of reasonably slick and good Hyundai interface that we've seen before in the Ioniq 5, and obviously the Kia EV6 as well. Final UK specifications and prices have yet to be announced, so I'm not going to go on and say there's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, but let's be honest, you're probably going to get that on the car as well, which you're going to have your phone connected into. There's a wireless charging pad here, there's USB connectivity. Now this centre console is worth talking about, because where the Ioniq 5 has that sort of moving, floating console, it's fixed here in the Ioniq 6, so you've got two very distinct driver and passenger compartments. But again, like the rear, the feeling of space is absolutely huge. There's a massive storage area underneath here, which, you know, is kind of rubberized on the bottom, so things aren't going to roll around and scratch about. You know, so you've also got a decent size armrest in here. I've got, you know, good couple of cup holders for my water bottle and my coffee flask. They fit neatly in here. What is interesting, and I spoke about this a little bit in the back, is they've moved everything that you would normally find on the doors. So the electric window controls, the central locking switches, they're grouped here now, so that the doors can just be pushed out a little bit more, the door cards, again to emphasize the space. And it's a really interesting design. They've got that kind of ribbing at the top, which again reminds me of that kind of Raymond Loewy style from the 1930s, those streamliner locomotives we see there, and this great big kind of speaker grille there, and then this lovely big door bin which is kind of rubberized as well, but it's translucent, so you can see actually what's in it. And it's the same here, the sides of this storage department here are translucent as well, like the mirror housings on the outside in the aerial. I love that. Your climate control system is touch sensitive, so again it's you know, the touch sensitive buttons which are here, so for your climate control, upping the temperature and down, at least it's always on, at least it's always there, and you can always see it, so it's nice and easy to get to, which is one thing I have to say. Volume control for your media there, column stocks are nice and easy to hand. The driving position is very, very good, but again, I'm in a left-hand drive car, so I'm going to reserve a little bit of judgment until I'm in a right-hand drive car and I'm actually driving it. But so far so good. I've got a nice straight ahead driving position. The mirrors, these digital camera mirrors, which I don't like on the Audi, I do like on the Honda E, and I kind of like on the Genesis GV60. It's kind of the same here. They are sort of in the right height for where you expect to look to find a mirror, but again, your eye is still drawn slightly to the actual camera pod on the side. Maybe if they'd done the same as Honda and put the cameras further down the doors, you know, smaller cameras further down the doors, and just had the mirrors there, it'd be a bit easier. But it's okay, as I say, it's better than Audi's one, which are halfway down the door. So I can't really fault them on that. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the driving position. Well, it's good. You've got a nice two-spoke steering wheel. You've got the 4 pixels on the steering wheel which light up now that they don't on the Ioniq 5, and they will actually give you your state of charge. Quite clever, you know, if it's charging, that's where your state of charge is. Your transmission control is here, so twist forward for drive, back for neutral, and reverse or push in for park, nice and easy. Brake regeneration, again, until we drive it, we don't know how it's going to feel, but going on past performance with Hyundai's, it's adjustable via these 2 paddles behind the steering wheel here. And you've also got this drive mode button here to select your modes in the car, which you've got eco, normal, and the ubiquitous sport. So everything's relatively familiar in terms of what to expect in here, but the design of it is fantastic. I absolutely love this interior, more so than I think than I like the Ioniq 5, and I really like the Ioniq 5's interior, but I think this is just a bit better. You've got this big slide out drawer instead of a glove box, which I think is a great idea. That's nice. There's plenty storage, as I say, round about the car. The quality of it is good. This is a pre-production car, so again, I can't go too far into sort of like saying, well, that feels a bit cheap and things. That's not. But on the whole, I have to say, it's pretty decent. Even some of the plastics, where I've kind of criticised Hyundai before, they're starting to feel a bit more premium, and that's going to be key when you're thinking about going up against the likes of BMW, Polestar, Tesla maybe not so much, but you know, against BMW and Polestar, that's going to be key. Now, let me talk about sustainability, because there is a massive emphasis on sustainability with this car. Hyundai really want to be seen as a company that's doing what they can in terms of ecological build of cars. So the factory where it's going to be built is going to be a carbon neutral factory. A lot of the materials in here are recycled, and you can see that, and I do like it. You know, the plastics that's used here, these are all recycled PET plastics. The leather that's in this car, the process that it goes through, the tanning process and things, is all done in an ecological way. If you go for the fabric, then again it's a recycled fabric they use. Even the carpets, the car's carpets are made from recycled fishing nets that are pulled from the world's oceans. So again, a huge amount of emphasis on that. But it's not just on the interior. The paint of the car, you know, it's water-based paints, as most of them are these days, but the pigmentation is different. There's the use of bamboo in it as well. They've really gone to great lengths to do this, and again, they have to be applauded, and they are doing their best to be seen as a more ecological car company, and you can really tell. And the Ioniq 6 is a step on from what we've seen from Hyundai before. But in terms of this interior, I think this is absolutely phenomenal. I really do. I think this is one of the nicest interiors in its class. As I say, it's not the fussiness of the BMW i4. I kind of prefer it to the Polestar as well, and I absolutely love the Polestar. And as I say, it shares that kind of minimalist kind of design of the Tesla, but just having a little bit more intuitive things for things like climate control being physically there, you know, and things being in front of you here rather than always being a big center display over here. So yeah, of its main competitors, I think this has got the win for the interior for me. Now, final specifications, as I say, have yet to be decided, so I can't go into equipment levels or what you get and what you don't get as standard, but obviously once we get a car to drive, we'll discuss that in the proper road test. Now, let's talk about battery sizes and range. The car is going to be available with two battery sizes, either a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery size or a 53 kilowatt hour battery size. The larger of the two you'll be able to have with either a single motor or dual motor all-wheel drive version. Then the larger of the two, that 77.4 kilowatt hour battery, should give, according to WLTP figures, a range of up to 379 miles, which is bang on where it should be in terms of its main rivals, such as the Model 3, the Polestar 2 and the i4 from BMW. But given our experience of all of these cars and how efficient and how close Hyundai and Kias have got to getting that achievable figure in the past with their other cars, I'd say this will be better than the Polestar and the BMW and on a par with the Tesla. So that's going to be a real tick in the box for this particular car. Now, it runs an 800 volt architecture, but it also has 400 volt capability as well. And the charging speeds it'll take are quite high. And if you are using one of those ultra rapid chargers, a 10 to 80% charge in the big battery will take as little as 18 minutes for those quick splash and dashes to get you on your way. This is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the marketplace, this car. The other thing the car will come with is a vehicle to load socket, which we've seen on the Ioniq 5 as well, where you can be able to charge external devices using the battery of the Ioniq 6. Say perhaps if you stumbled across someone with a car that didn't quite manage the range of the Ioniq 6 and they had run out of battery power and needed to get home, you could be the good Samaritan with your Hyundai and give them some of your juice. Yeah, it makes you a nice person, this car. It really does. Now obviously I can't give you impressions of performance and handling till we've actually driven the car, but I can tell you some figures, which is that the dual motor all-wheel drive car produces up to 320 brake horsepower, and that's enough for this car to scrabble its way to 60 miles an hour from standstill in around about 5 seconds. Now that's not Tesla fast, but it's on a par with the BMW i4, eDrive 40 and the Polestar 2 single motor cars. So it's class competitive, shall we say. But what I will also say is this: Hyundai are developing their N brand at great pace. Now that's the spin-off from their kind of rallying pedigree side of things. We've seen the piston-engined i20N and i30N hot hatches, and they have shown a concept of the Ioniq 6 in that N brand sort of guise. And given obviously that Kia have done the EV6 GT with over 500 brake horsepower, I wouldn't bet the house on not seeing something like that in an Ioniq 6 sometime soon. And again, UK prices and final specifications have yet to be announced, so we can't confirm any of that. But all I will say is, given our experience of Hyundai products so far, we know that it's going to be very, very class competitive. But more than that, more than just the actual cost of the car, is the overall sort of like running cost that you've got to look at. And obviously Hyundai offer a phenomenal warranty package with their cars, which obviously come on the Ioniq 6. And in terms of its range capability as well, the amount of time and cost that you're going to have charging the car, which, let's be honest, is now a factor with the cost of living rising and energy prices these days. It has to be taken into consideration. These longer range cars, they're going to offer pretty good value for money when you look at the overall whole life costs. So yeah, this is going to be a really competitive car in the marketplace. And whilst our love of the crossover and SUV shows no signs of abating, it is nice to see a new entrant into this compact sports executive saloon sector, and it's nice to see it from a brand such as Hyundai. Now, of course, its main rivals are going to be the cars we've spoken about throughout this sneak peek review: the BMW i4, the Polestar 2, and of course the darling of the sector, the Tesla Model 3. But don't expect Audi and Mercedes-Benz to stay quiet for too long, because again, if you look at tradition, that's been their kind of stomping ground as well, with the A4 and the C-Class. So to see perhaps an EQ version of a C-Class or an e-tron A4 or the next generation A4, I wouldn't be too surprised of that. But I think Hyundai have taken a bit of a march, and they've taken the bull by the horns, and I think that has to be applauded. And I can't wait to drive this, because I think this could hold a few surprises and a few tricks up its sleeves. Hyundai have been very brave with this car, and you have to applaud them for that. And as we've seen with the Ioniq 5 and soon to see Ioniq 7, they are treading their own path, stylistically at least, and they are challenging people's perception of the Hyundai brand. And that is a good thing. I think it's a very brave and a very good thing for the brand. And given how much that we enjoyed the drive of the Ioniq 5, I don't think this one's going to disappoint too much. But is it enough to tempt you away from your Tesla Model 3? Well, we're not going to know that until we drive the car and, dare I say, maybe put the two of them head to head in a test. But what I will say is this, given how good the brand's cars have been so far in terms of their electric offerings, and with an ever-expanding charging infrastructure and the efficiency that we've seen from them, they are going to challenge the very class best for top honours. And it is down to cars such as the Ioniq 6, as I say, that people are shifting away from the more kind of legacy brands that we've seen, the more prestigious brands such as BMW, Mercedes and Audi. And it's these guys that are really pushing the boundaries, whereas the other ones are playing a little bit more safe with their traditional customer base. But the thing is, as we've said before, as customers come into this EV market space, they are less likely to be drawn in by those legacy manufacturers, and what they want is efficiency, technology, and, dare I say it, a bit more bravery. And it's those things that are going to help Hyundai shift the perceptions and preconceived ideas of what a Hyundai is and change that for good. Couple it with a car that looks this good, and that can only be a good thing for the brand. Thank you once again for watching another edition of Sneak Peeks on AutoEV. As always, please remember that you have subscribed to the AutoEV channel and pressed the little bell button down below, because then that way you're notified of when our next video goes live. If you've enjoyed the video, please remember, give it a bit of a thumbs up and leave some comments down below as well. Good or bad, let us know how we're doing. And remember, we're across all social media platforms as well, so Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. So go and give us a follow there, because every little bit helps. And if this has just whetted your appetite for even more, then stick on our YouTube channel and have a little gander through our back catalogue and waste away an afternoon just watching a silly old Scotsman talk about electric cars a little bit more. Until the next time, all that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching AutoEV. I'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.